Hello everybody, this is Alau here. Today I would like to teach you guys how to master paper 1 in the DSE history exam. Frankly, I hate this type of questions as they limit the scope of historical facts that could be used to answer the question. But on the other hand, it is an upside for students who struggle with the direction of answering questions. TBQ questions in history are like a step-by-step analysis to historical information. They are most likely secondary sources in the forms of short excerpts, cartoons, data, or graphs. Other than understanding the obvious, students have to take one step further to analyze the significance of the data to the question and how the data can be interrelated. I will be explaining how you can do these two things in the following video. In the second part, I will be explaining how you can deal with different question types. So, how do I interpret the meaning of the source? My history teacher always told us that history is just about common sense, and it is obvious that when you age, the experience that you gain in perceiving the world increases, and you will become better at common sense. But you only have 2.5 years in total to deal with the HKDSE syllabus, and it is just impossible to age enough and become mature. The strategy that I adopted is by doing more past papers and read more about the historical background. I would buy books related to the historical events and read different viewpoints and perspectives. The other method is by doing more past papers. Personally, I have finished both DSE and advanced level past papers and realized that the questions and sources keep on repeating year after year. Although not a 100% identical way, the way of answering the questions are simply the same. The more you read, the better you become. The next step is to understand the interrelationship between the sources. The first type of relation identified is contradictory sources in terms of standpoints. Sources may give you different rationales and leaves it to you to elaborate. By extracting important information from the sources and elaborating on them, you can create a two-sided answer to 8 marks a question easily, which is usually in the end of each DSE question. The second type of relation identified is complementary, which means the sources explain a certain standpoint and often explore different areas of an historical event or different viewpoints. Some questions may even ask you to compare the sources in terms of the characteristics, for example, which of them is most hostile to a certain nation. In this case, you will need to supply your own viewpoints to make the answer two-sided. As we enter the second part, I'll explain to you what DBQ question types you encounter in the DSE history exam. Firstly, attitude and view. Students always mix up attitude and view as they might seem similar. However, they are entirely different. Attitude refers to the author's feelings and emotions, while view refers to the author's opinions, assertions, and justifications. For example, students can simply answer positive or negative attitudes when they come across attitude questions. When it comes to view, students need to use wording such as the author believes, thinks that, to answer the question. Never mix up attitude and views as teachers are aware of the distinction, and your score would definitely suffer. Secondly, characteristics and nature. Nature and characteristics are like two similar elements. Nature is a subject's core. Without this nature, the subject will lose its inherent quality. For example, Chinese believe that man can either be born good or evil, according to different scholars in ancient times. Good and evil are the nature of man. While characteristics is the subject's attributes outside its core, they are used to describe the nature. For example, a good-natured person is helpful, enthusiastic, while on the other hand, an evil-natured person is wicked and tempt others to do bad things. These characteristics describe the nature. Thirdly, purpose. To answer this question type, students have to answer in three main parts: audience, message, and response. Audience is the intended receivers of the propaganda, cartoon information, etc. They must be a specific group of people, for example, the people of a certain nation. The message is the intended meaning of the propaganda. For example, you can use, the sources hopes to convey the message of, and then explain what you see in the cartoon with descriptive language. Response refers to the actions that the issuer of the propaganda intends to motivate in the audiences. It may be a feeling of hatred or motivation of action. Let's say, join the US Army. Fourthly, identify. Possibly the simplest question type. It requires you to identify a country, a person, or an event that is shown in the source. You have to identify the significant details of the cartoon to answer this question. For an event, you may quote the year, the details of the event that match the description. For a country, you may quote the distinctive features. For example, Britain is represented by sailors and John Bull. The US is represented by Uncle Sam and Stars and Stripes. Russia is represented by the grizzly bear. Germany is represented by pointed war helmets. France is represented by Marianne or people wearing fortune caps or liberty caps in the movie Smurfs. For a person, you can identify their clothing or habits, or simply their actions. Clemonge has a handlebar-shaped whisker on his face. Hitler has a toothbrush-shaped whisker on his face. Churchill always holds a cigar. Fifth, bias. Bias means that it is a partial view. To make it simple, it is a description deviating from the truth. The types of biases includes bias in favor of, bias against, bias due to difference in value, and bias due to the making of sweeping generalization. Although it is not a question type that is dominant in the exam, equipping yourself with this skill will definitely help you understand the hidden agendas of different nations and people. An important thing to know that criticism are not necessarily biases. For example, if an author believes that post-1919 Germany deserved the war guild clause and £6.6 billion indemnity, as long as the author supports his argument with rich evidence and sound argument, the criticism might not be biased. 6. Usefulness and limitations. In the DSE level, you can simply answer this question by explaining the usefulness and with the provided data, and limitations with your own knowledge. The point to note is that topic sentences must be clear, and limitations must be highly relevant to the topic discussed. Any deviance to the question words may constitute as an off-topic answer. To show your high-order thinking, you can approach this question in another way, by explaining the sources one by one with different criterions. For example, when was the source published? At or after the event? Why was the source published? Did it serve propaganda purposes? Was the source biased? What role did the author play in the event? Was he an advocate, or was he a mere person passing by, or was he a mere observer? These criterions will help you decide the usefulness and limitations of the sources. Thank you.